Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, Australian award-winning author of kick-butt heroines in action-packed fantasy worlds, and I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to one of Montlake's executive editors who has been working with Amazon Publishing for over 10 years. We are talking to the one and only Maria Gomez. How are you today?
Hi, Kaya. It's so nice to be here.
I know, I'm so pumped for this interview because, as you would have already seen, I have a million questions for you, but I really want to start from the start. How did your journey begin into the publishing world to now?
So I was actually living in Puerto Rico. I was studying at the University of Puerto Rico and I was studying psychology. I had started out actually in English Lit and I was getting my degree and thinking, what am I going to do with an English Lit degree? I don't know. So I switched over to psychology. And again, didn't quite know what I was going to do with that. I had been working in bookstores since I was 17. I started out at a bookstore called The Bookshop in a mall, and then I opened up the first border store in Puerto Rico. And I used to mostly stay in the children's and teen area. That was back when YA was in the children's area. And I would do the children's book reading every Sunday. So I worked in children's books for about 5 years. I mean, in bookstores.
Yeah.
So when I graduated with a degree in psychology, I just didn't know for sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I loved psychology, but I really loved books and I didn't want to be an author. So I just kind of put a few feelers out there. I was like, what can I do? And I just stumbled across, some editorial assistant positions. So I applied to a couple of editorial assistant positions, and I also applied to a graduate program in psychology and just, sent it out into the world. So I was about 2 weeks out from graduating university, and I got a call from HarperCollins Children's Books, and they wanted me to come interview. And I said, of course. I went over and interviewed for an editorial assistant position for two imprints, which was the general children's books and also their bilingual imprint, which was called Rio. And as I interviewed, I thought it went well, went out to lunch, and I got a call when I was at lunch saying I'd gotten the position. So less than a month later, I was living in New York and just thrust headfirst in the world of publishing. It is, I know that a lot of people are like, how do you get into publishing? Like, did you have to take special courses? Did you have to have contacts? Did your university counselor, did anybody help you? And I was like, no, I genuinely just applied. I had a lifelong love of books. I had been working in bookstores. I obviously knew books very well, and especially children's books, which is where I started out. So it was great to just put that knowledge of books to work. And of course, having a lot of classes in English Lit and almost a completed major, and that helped, but it was mostly my passion for books. And the bilingual aspect, of course, helped because they were looking for someone that could do both.
You sound like you came out of a book. That sounds like the New York Dream, right? That's fantastic. So how did you go from that to being an executive editor for Montlake? What was your path? What did it look like?
So I am very lucky that the path that I started out in was an apprenticeship. And, I started out in New York as an editorial assistant to two imprints. I moved up to assistant editor because there is a difference. I got promoted to assistant editor, and then from assistant editor to associate editor, and then from associate editor to editor. And that was sort of my path at HarperCollins Children's Books. And, when I first started out, it was a lot of doing photocopies, right? I was doing photocopies. I was sitting in on author calls. I was not getting coffee or anything else like that in New York, like people think. But it was, it was still a very assistant life where you're, running errands and reading manuscripts. I was writing promo copy. Like what we did in New York at the time with editorial assistants is we were writing the promo copy. Here where I work is a little different. We have vendors for that, like professional promo copywriters, but as editorial assistants, it's part of the process. And I'm so happy that I did all of that because you really get to learn so many different aspects of the publishing world. And like I said, it really was an apprenticeship and it was fabulous. It was really just the most fun. I remember being there with the other editorial assistants late at night, just reading the famous flesh pile, the manuscript submission pile, and just like writing, or like sending off the rejection letters, unfortunately, or singling out like the really gems out of the pile. But it was a wonderful time. And from that experience, when I became an editor, I actually saw a listing for an editor position here at Amazon. And I knew that I wanted to do something more than just children's books. And I applied to Amazon, not really knowing anything about the West Coast and didn't know that I wanted to leave New York or anything, but thought it was worth a shot. So I applied for Amazon to an editor position. They flew me out, I interviewed, I got the job. I didn't know, it was very, very new. Amazon Publishing was incredibly new at the time. So I didn't know what imprint I was going to be working for. And I didn't know what genre of books I was going to be working for. So I had to accept pretty much a blind position. I knew I was going to be an editor. I knew it was going to be books, but that was all I knew. And I said yes. I was like, this sounds exciting. I want to do this. And I said yes. And I came over and it was wonderful. I started out working for Crossing, which is the international imprint. So I was buying international books, bringing them over to the US market, having them translated and putting them out for English readers to enjoy. So it was just a wonderful time and a lot of fun to really get to travel and to read books from other cultures. It was fascinating.
Do you have a particular genre you personally like to read?
I honestly, and I know this sounds pretty self-serving, but it is romance. It's honestly romance. It has always been romance. And it was romance back when I was in children's books because I forgot to say I was in picture books, middle grade, and YA, but YA was where I naturally gravitated to. And I remember very much how excited I was when I got my advanced reading copy of Twilight back in the day. And I was like, oh, this book is going to be big. And of course, it was way before the movies, even before it was published. And it was just such wonderful cover and really gripping promo copy. And the book to me at the time was unputdownable. And of course, for many other people, it turned out to be. But it was always about romance for me.
That worked out so well for you that you ended up in Montlake. For those who are watching and who may be new to writing or publishing, can you explain what an editor does briefly?
Absolutely. So a lot of different publishing houses have different specificities in terms of what the role entails. But I can tell you that at Amazon, I'm an acquisitions editor, which means that I am mainly buying manuscripts. I am buying manuscripts directly from authors or from their agents. Mm-hmm. And what that means is I'll read a lot of books, I'll get a lot of submissions, I'll read a lot of books, I'll see a lot of pitches. And out of those, I hate to say pick my favorites because that's oversimplifying it, but it is sort of I can see how this one could work for our market or for our list. And then I would say that I'm sort of a gatekeeper. And in a nicer sense, of course, for the publishing house. Yeah. So we are absolutely forming the list. We are the first read for the publishing house, and we are the last read. So we're also the main point of contact for the authors. We have so many wonderful colleagues and a lot of different vendors and people that we work with. We have something called an author relations manager, and their job title sort of translates to author concierge. So they're there to solve problems. It's wonderful. So we have a lot of people that the author does get to interact with. But at the end of the day, the editor is sort of the project manager. And that's a very Amazon term, but it helps to sort of oversimplify it and think of the project manager. I'm in charge of making sure that the cover and then the promo copy and everything and the copy edits and the dev edits sort of all roll into one. Now, of course, I'm not the Lone Ranger here. I have, like I said, great teams, but at the end of the day, I do acquire the books and then take them from soup to nuts.
Yeah. So basically, you are the girl boss of publishing. To be humble, I'll say it for you.
It's a really great job. It's a really fun job. It's just such a pleasure to be able to work with authors who are the creative geniuses, right? And they're the ones who write these wonderful books, and I just get to read them and say, this is exactly what we need for our list. So I'm very lucky in that sense. There are many paths to publishing now, because clearly it's not just publishing houses anymore. There's self-publishing, which at Amazon is called Kindle Direct Publishing, or KDP as we call it. So in a sense, some of that gatekeeping that has been an editor's job in the past has really been passed down now to the readers. The readers are the ones that are surfacing the books up to the top, and you guys are the gatekeepers. And of course, because being an author yourself, but I think it's wonderful that we're not the only gatekeepers.
And that actually rolls into my next question, actually, because I did want to raise that for such a long time, when self-publishing first came out, indie authors had obstacles when it came to, obviously, the discussion of traditionally published versus self-publishing. There was some stigma around it because it was new, it was fresh, and, we were creating a new path. And Amazon really enabled a lot of us to do that, become business owners in that sense, because it created the platform where we were able to upload our books into the world. So I'm curious as to what Montlake or any other Amazon division publishing house, how they differ from a standard traditional publishing house like the top 5.
Well, coming from HarperCollins, which was my experience previously, and that was 11 years ago, self-publishing was so new at that time that publishing didn't really know what to make of it. So it was my first real experience with self-publishing was when I came to Amazon, and it has always been such a positive one because Amazon actually had an imprint at the time called Amazon Encore, which was dedicated to taking self-published authors and republishing their already self-published work and just helping them, with the process. Sometimes it was with a new cover, sometimes it was the same cover, it just depended on the market. And just helping them get out there with, marketing plans and just wonderful creative ways to really make their books more saleable. So when I first started at Amazon, I saw how pro self-publishing and pro just all different forms of publishing, Amazon really is. And it's wonderful. And to this day, I work with, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe I work with as many self-published authors as I do authors that are agented and have never self-published a book. So it really is, and I call my authors that do both self-publishing and work with me hybrid authors. Yeah. They do both. They do a little bit of both, and it's great. We're very cognizant of their self-publishing schedules. We work together to make sure that we're amplifying their efforts and not cannibalizing each other. And I would say that Amazon in general, just as a publisher, in my experience, it's very dynamic, and they're always trying to see how they can really make things better and more author-friendly and just a little bit more visible. Yeah. We're trying to get visibility for the books. That's the most important part.
To add to that, I have had a handful of authors on here that I've interviewed who have been a part of Montlake or another division of Amazon, and they have always spoken both on screen and off screen, which says a lot, that they've absolutely loved their experience with you guys. And it's exactly as you said, that's the same feedback that I've heard. So I think that's just amazing. I want to talk about Montlake experience because obviously I'm going to call you guys the romance experts, but I was wondering if you're noticing any trends at all in genres or tropes, and what's happening at the moment.
So I get this question a lot, and I will say that trends come and go. They're very cyclical. So I tend to not pay too much attention to them because by the time that a trend becomes popular, it's almost too late to say, let's get something in this particular trend, or, because by the time, it's written, it's published, some other new trend will be on the up and up. But there are a few tropes, or quite a few tropes, that are perennials in romance, right? I will say that, of course, billionaires were the epitome of the top trope a couple of years ago. It was all billionaires, and right before that, it was vampires. But billionaires, and of course, the billionaire vampire was the epitome of everything at that one point. But I will say that some of the, I mean, even though right now the focus isn't on, let's say, billionaires, it is still wealthy man. It is one of those perennial tropes that's been around since Cinderella, which is, one of the ultimate love stories, fantasy love stories. And, it's wealthy man. It's, close proximity. It's, oh, we're stuck in a shed, or we're stuck, in a cabin in a snowstorm, or it's friends to lovers, right? It's like, oh, my childhood friend who I've always had a crush on. And, these are all, it's insta love. Insta love, it comes and goes. Like, it's like it was very, very popular a few years ago, and then it waned, and then it came back. And I don't think it's one of those things that's never going to go away, because it's that instant recognition of soulmates that, it's what we want to see. It's enemies to lovers too. It's like, I hate them. Oh, but I kind of like where there is, that much flame, or where there's, what is it? Is it when there's ash, there's fire? So so there's definitely a lot of tropes that we see in different ways that are going to always be steady. But I wouldn't, and of course, I feel like the pioneers of certain trends always get a lot of attention, when it's something like, when it's vampires, when it's like the very steamy erotica or borderline erotica, whether it's the shapeshifters, whether it is fantasy romance, when it's starting to, when you're at the forefront of the trend and you are sort of leading it, you get the most attention. But by the time it sort of trickles down, you're like, let me try to grab onto a trend, it's starting to trickle out. So I think the best thing that you can do as an author personally is just write what you love, whether it's trendy or not. Write what you love, because there's going to be other people that love exactly that. And it's okay if it's not trendy. It can just be a great book, and it can still sell a lot of copies, even though it's not there's 100 of others out there. And actually that can work in your favor too. If you're the only one writing in this trend or in this sort of genre, and there's hundreds of others, you might be able to stand out that way.
I'm just curious, do you and your team go to the Bat Cave and you're like crunching numbers? You're like, right, today we're going to figure out what we think is going to be moving up, and like you're crunching numbers and you've got data and all these things. I'm like, surely you do, but at the same time, it must be a very difficult thing to anticipate as well.
We don't unfortunately have a crystal ball. I wish that I did. If I did, I would be putting out a call to action to all of my authors and be like, I need a single daddy ex stepbrother book stat.
Guys, everyone, this is what we need right now. No, I'm kidding.
Although single dads do really well, I will say, and I think that's just a personal preference too. Single dads are always such a, heartwarming, right?
What are your tropes for you? What are your favorite 3 tropes?
I'm not going to say favorites, because I will say, I mean, Wealthy Man is always just a great fantasy. I think Friends to Lovers is really great to see. I kind of love insta love and alpha males too. I will tell you that since the pandemic started, and even though, we're hopefully on the up and up, we've seen a lot of romantic comedies do very well, the rom-coms. Those actually, right before the pandemic, I put out a call to action to my agent friends to say, give me a good tearjerker. I want Jojo Moyes, but I want it with a happy ending. They have, like, he needs to survive at the end, but I want all the sad crying. And as soon as COVID hit, I think we were all just in need of comic relief. And I was like, what can have me like rolling around laughing, tears of laughter? That's what I want. I think we're almost back to the ugly crying phase. So yeah, but I really love my rom-coms, my slapstick, my smart slapstick, where it's like you're laughing, but it's got some meat to it.
One thing that I absolutely love about Montlake is you're prioritizing diverse love stories at the moment, which I love. And I was curious as to what we can expect from that and expect from Montlake in the coming years as well.
So we live in a diverse world. It is obviously a priority to have a list that represents that. It's very important to make sure that the list isn't so homogenous that it excludes anybody. And we want to make sure that our list represents the the reality of our society, of our world. And I will say on a personal level, as a Latina who grew up reading a lot of books and reading a lot of romance, I didn't see a lot of heroines that looked like me in books growing up. But honestly, that never stopped me from seeing myself as that heroine, even if the heroine was blonde and blue-eyed and pale as milk. I was like, that's me. You can't, that's me in the page. I can see myself in that. And what I really want readers to sort of see with me is that a great book is a great book, and that you can put yourself in the shoes of the heroine or the hero, no matter what their background is. And that's really what I want sort of everybody to take away from it. So it's not that, you necessarily have to experience all of the cultures and do all of the things, but you can really find common ground with just about anybody. So, and that's how I grew up reading books. And I think that everybody can sort of have that take on it too, or some other take. But I think it's important to have those experiences because great books, like I said, are just great books.
And can we expect any kind of growth in any, I don't know if you're probably not allowed to reveal anything, but any side projects or anything like that Montlake or Amazon Publishing might have coming up in the next few years, or is this all top secret?
It depends on what you mean by side projects. You mean like
anything that's relevant?
Have any? Here's the truth about Amazon is that we're very secretive, and I don't mean like me. I mean like the general Amazon is very secretive. So usually when I'm finding out about it is when you're finding out about it too. Okay. So I don't know of anything very true that hasn't been announced yet, is what I will say. So
the focus right now is just amazing books.
Amazing books.
I love it. That sounds like a good plan nonetheless.
It's a great plan. It's a great plan.
I want to know what's one of the things that you've actually found that was most surprising to you in this industry, whether it was something personal to you or whether it's, the community itself or trends or whatever it may be. What were some of the surprising things you found in your timeline so far?
I think the most surprising thing that I found was that even the most seasoned authors that have been publishing for decades still get nervous when they hand over their manuscripts. I think that I just assumed that authors that have been doing this for as long as I was, alive would just be like, I got this, like, here you go, no need to edit, you're good. But authors are people and these books are their babies. And it's everybody needs that reassurance. Whether you're a new author, whether you're a seasoned pro, everybody wants to make sure that the creation they're putting out into the world is received in the same way that they created it.
Yeah, it's so true. One of the biggest, and it's a discussion we have on here often for authors, is imposter syndrome. And I'm sure you've probably heard that many times before. But yeah, for some reason, and it doesn't surprise me that you say seasoned authors, because I think of authors that I know that have been doing it for 20, 40 years, and they're still in the corner, rocking back and forth, unsure about their current manuscript. So I find that interesting that that's one of the things that surprised you the most as well. I really like that. What is the process? So say if an author would like to pitch to Montlake, what do they have to do?
So the first thing to do is write the very best pitch you can write. Like, I really enjoy knowing what other books might be similar. What, is it X meets X? That's always like that little punchy line that gets you hooked. What is it? Is it, we were joking around this morning at another editorial meeting that I had, and the pitch was sort of Outlander meets Jurassic Park. And even though that wasn't a real book, by the way, we were just joking around about something. But that's what I mean. Like, what's the hook? What's the hook? Can you dilute it? Can you punch it up? Can you grab me in just a short paragraph? Because I think outlines are incredibly important, but you can't write a very punchy outline. You have to actually just say, sort of what the book is about. But having that punchy, like, X meets X, or, just a nice little intro that's going to really tell me why I should be excited about this book is just gold. That is my best advice to authors, is to practice the pitch, to talk to other authors, to look at what's selling, to really see what's similar out there and really work on that pitch. And of course, I have authors that that know people, like know some of my authors, and they'll sort of be like, hey, can you introduce me? I have authors that come to me from agents, and we have a lot of great partners in our agents because they get to know us on a personal level, so they know what our tastes are. And that's always great. I have authors that will just, sort of reach out and, with their great pitch, like I said, and just catch me on that hook. And it's wonderful. If it is a debut author, my recommendation would be to have a full manuscript, because you're going to, I need to know that you can deliver to the last page. But a seasoned pro can get away with a great pitch and an outline and maybe a few chapters.
Because usually they'll be done writing that book within a couple of weeks or months.
Absolutely. Which is actually something that can be a struggle with a debut author who has been writing a book for years.
Yeah.
And it's like, this might be the best book I've ever written, but how long is it going to take you to write the second one? And they might not know. And then when they're under contract, it can feel like a lot of pressure.
So what are you looking for right now personally? What's the vibe that you're after?
I want, and like I said, I'm still really loving romantic comedy, a smart romantic comedy. I am looking for that. I'm still looking for that ugly tearjerker. I want that ugly cry. I want something that has me sobbing into my cup. I do, like I said, want that Jojo Moyes with a happy ending. I still want to see all of the beautiful tropes, the insta-loves. I want to see, friends to lovers. I want to see the gamut of everything from funny to sad. It doesn't really narrow that down a lot, but I will say that for the more niche subgenres, which what I mean is just like there's a smaller category where it's, the fantasy romance or the shapeshifters or even vampires now are considered more niche. We just don't see a lot of them, or cowboys or anything else. What I like to see from those niche subgenres is that they have an element that kind of pushes them more into the broad. So let's say it's a book about cowboys, but it's more than just a book about cowboys. It is a deep love story, that transcends generations and has, a family drama. And it brings something else to the table that I can just say, yes, this is cowboys, but this is not your Walmart cowboys. This is your like really deep, crosses over into women's fiction cowboys. So I feel like that's what I'm looking for. I like things that kind of cross over a little bit into two genres.
That's perfect, because I think so many authors as well really try to just have one genre, because for so long they're like, you must know what it is and it can only be this. And a lot of authors struggle because they have everything in it as well. So that's wonderful to hear. So you take solicited, is that correct?
That is correct.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so our, all of our detail information is on apub.com. So we, you can sort of find us there. We're obviously on Publishers Marketplace as well. And it really is, it's about finding the right editor for the project. So if they're buying books that are similar to the book that you are writing, then that is a good bet. If I tell this story all the time, but I mean, it's not really a story, but I tell this anecdote all the time, that you might write the next Dean Koontz novel, right? It might be the very best novel. It might just be the runaway bestseller. But if you submit that Dean Koontz novel to Harlequin, they're not going to take it. Not because it's not the best book they've ever read, but because it doesn't fit what they're publishing. So the most important tip there is to just know your audience. And by that, I mean the publishing house that you're submitting to.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, because I think sometimes authors they kind of scatter it in a way where they're just hoping for the best. And I always say that having a literary agent or a publishing is much like a publishing house, should I say, is much like a marriage. So to make sure that it's the right fit for both. Who are some authors that really left an impression on you? What made them shine so brightly when they pitched you or they met you? Who are those authors and what did they do?
All of my authors are special, and all of my authors shine brightly in their own way, and they've all done things to honestly surprise and delight me, which is why I work with them. I will say, and I'm going to come back to that pitch letter, but when I get one of those like really punchy pitch letters or those outlines that actually are funny, if it's, obviously if it's for a rom-com and they're like, I'm laughing just reading the outline, I'm sharing that with my colleagues.
Yeah.
And we're sort of putting it on the digital billboard and we're saying, this is a shining star. Watch out for this one.
What would you say then the timeline for somebody who has pitched and what happens thereafter to the glorious golden path of then being published? What can they expect?
I'm going to give you a general timeline, but don't hold me to that because every imprint and every book has different timeline needs. So, for example, different imprints have longer timelines based on a lot of different factors. And sometimes, even within Montlake, it can be anywhere from 7 months to 10 months. And there's various reasons for that. So this is just a general sense. But let's say that I signed up an author tomorrow and I had a full manuscript already, because if not, then of course I just have to wait for them to finish the manuscript and deliver on their deadline. So they deliver their manuscript and I'm going to immediately put that forth into what we call the developmental edits. Mm-hmm. And here at Amazon, I have a roster of amazing developmental editors that I collaborate with. Previously, when I was at Harper, I was doing all of the developmental edits myself, but I had a smaller list. So I could dedicate several months, at a time to a manuscript by myself. Here, I need a little bit of more help, but I have my fingers in all the pots. So I'm always, on the calls, on the letters, but, we do work with a fabulous roster of developmental editors. So the first step would be that I would pair up an author with another developmental editor. We would have a call, make sure that it was a good fit personality-wise, which I usually know already. I wouldn't, if I was like, this developmental editor has a pretty strong hand, and I know this author is a little bit more sensitive, so that's not going to be a good fit. But I know that this developmental editor is like all like cheerleading the whole way down, and this is going to be a great fit for that particular author. Or this author just needs a lot of extra help. Like they need solid spaghetti ideas. They're just throw all the spaghetti at the wall. They need all of that to see what clicks. So it really depends on the author. So that's the first. So then I pair those up. We have a call. It's usually a video call nowadays so that we can all see each other's faces and really communicate the enthusiasm for the book. We read it simultaneously. I've usually already read it, but I'm reading it now for edits. So I'm making notes and they're making notes. And they'll usually put together the letter based on both of our feedback, send it over to the author, have another call, get on the phone call and be like, remember, these are just suggestions. Don't panic. Even if it's 7 pages long, I promise it's mostly praise. And so we'll have that call. They'll get to work on their edits based on what they feel resonates with them. And that's very important, that the edits that an author is making are edits that make sense to them. It is not my book. My name is not going on that. They need to be comfortable with the edits that they are making. If they are making edits that they do not agree with, the book will not turn out well. So that is a very important little side note there. So then after we have the finished final manuscript and it's all wonderful and clean, it's going to go into what we call copy edits, which are now where the grammar comes into it. It's like, where are the typos? Where are the commas? Where is the misplaced modifiers? Where's the repetitive words? So our copy editors, again, we have a great roster of copy editors that we work with, and they're very experienced, far more experienced than I am. And I'm pretty good with the Chicago Manual of Style, but these people are like on it. So it's fabulous. And it'll go through the copy edits. It'll then do proofreads, which is almost the same as the copy edits, but obviously looking for anything that the copy editor might have missed. Mm-hmm. And then we also put it through a third edit, which is the cold reads, which is now just to find anything egregious that anything might have dropped. And with all of those processes, it's designed to make sure we have the least amount of errors in our book. Nobody's perfect, even with all those I's. Sometimes a typo will slip through, and the readers will let us know. They will let us know if there's ever a typo. But again, we do our very best to make sure there's not. So while that is going on, I'm also working on the cover. And before the cover, the author has given me a questionnaire. It's called a book questionnaire. And it has all kinds of information in there. But in there, it's like, what other books are similar to your book? What covers do you like? What do you envision on this book? So we take that, I talk to marketing, I talk to my design team, we brainstorm, we talk to a designer, we brainstorm, and then covers start to happen. It is magical. And sometimes we nail it. And by we, I don't mean we, I mean the editorial we. The designer will nail it on the first round. And sometimes it takes several more rounds, which is, not the most optimal, but usually takes a couple of rounds at least. And, the author is in it from the very beginning. They're seeing all the rounds, they're giving their feedback, we're talking to marketing, we're coming to an agreement. And just like the dev edits, we never want an author to not like their cover. We want them to love it. And we also want the covers to sell. So it's a combination of what the author wants and what we think is going to sell. And that is the marriage that makes the best babies. And then out of that, also the promo copy is being written and the author is reviewing it and making it all punchy. And after that, it's sent off for advanced reading copies. It is put up on NetGalley. And then finally, after a long wait, the final finished product comes to our door and it's all shiny and beautiful. And the author is always very excited. And we have a beautiful book to put out into the world.
You are Superwoman, is all I'm going to say. To be married to multiple authors, I'm just like, I want to be you, Maria. You are amazing.
Come work with us. It's a lot of fun.
Please. I've got to back a suitcase. I'm already on my way.
Fantastic. You'll love Seattle weather.
I'm excited for it. There's a lot happening there, but I love how passionate you are, but also that it flows because you have such an amazing team supporting you. And I love also how much input you have from the author, because I think some authors are so used to, if they're publishing, if they're going into a marriage, they're going to lose a lot of that. And it's so nice to hear that there's so much input being had. What are some resources or podcasts or courses or anything of the sorts that you would recommend for authors? And what are some things that helped you along your journey?
Well, I will say that because my origin story did not start out with me doing a lot of research into publishing before I just kind of blindly sent in a few resumes, I didn't put a lot of thought into resources before I got into publishing. But I will say that Publishers Marketplace is a resource that I use all the time, and a resource that I think authors could use all the time by just seeing what is being sold and what is being acquired, and by which editors are buying what. And also, if they have any interest in agents, the agents who they're representing, who they're selling to. I think that's just a really great resource and a great place to sort of start. I would also say if they have any local writing groups or chapters, they should absolutely join those, especially if those writing groups include authors that are already published, whether that's self-published or traditionally published, because they will have a lot of wisdom to pass on. And I can sit over here and talk till I'm blue in the face about my experience as an editor, but the reality is that authors have a lot of, I don't want to say hoops to jump through, but a lot of other things that they need to learn. And the best resource is another author, and hopefully a published author. They usually have a lot of input into that. So I think making friends in the community, going to conferences, doing whatever local activities they can go to. And of course, not everybody can travel, and I know that. But sometimes some of these are digital. Sometimes you can just go online and just meet with author groups online. And honestly, take a look at Publishers Marketplace if you can, because it is a great resource of what's going on and who's buying what.
So what would you say for you personally, so far in your career, what has been your greatest challenge and what has been your greatest accomplishment?
So my greatest challenge was still a lot of fun, but that was when I first moved over to Amazon Crossing. Working on translations is challenging. And it is challenging because you have the language in which this fabulous best-selling book is written, and then you have to translate that into English. And sometimes you can lose some of the nuance of the original language, or it can just sound different to the English reader if it's too much of a literal translation. So coming up with a balance of how much artistic liberty can a translator use to make it natural for an English reader while still maintaining and retaining the author's original voice is challenging. And I am glad that I'm not a translator. We worked with some fantastic translators, and we worked with some fantastic developmental editors that were able to really put some magic out there. But the process of buying books that sometimes you only have a few sample chapters of and you can't read the language and you don't know what it's at the end, and sometimes there were surprises that we were like, I didn't know that was going to happen in the book. This is the Scandinavian mystery, and we just did not know. And for the English reader, that might not be something they want to see on the page.
Yeah.
And then we would work with the author, and it would all turn out perfectly well. But it was definitely coming from children's books where everything was pretty, and like it was pretty cut and dry, to then buying books about a mystery where the intricacies were not in your native languages was challenging and fun. And then my greatest accomplishment, not to sound hokey, but my greatest accomplishment is that I'm now an executive editor for Romance in Print. I'm pretty proud of that.
That's so amazing, Katsuri. Do you ever reflect back on when you were, I'm going to say that little girl in the bookstore, but you were a teenager, but
Oh no, I was in the bookstores at, like you were saying, when I was working at the bookstores, but I was in the bookstores in the library since I was like 6.
Yeah.
Like just buying and reading.
And would you have ever envisioned when you were younger that this is where you would be?
I did not, because I remember I was like, I would love to work in books, but then I would start to write and I didn't like what I was writing. And I was like, I can't be an author. I was like, that's so sad that I can't get paid to just read books.
Yeah.
And it didn't occur to me at the time, that the process of creating the book was something that I could be part of. Yeah. And I'm very happy about that, how it all turned out.
Then this is my favorite question to ask. What is the goal? What is the dream that you are chasing for your career? What is the next glass ceiling that you're wanting to break through for yourself?
So this is a tough one because I'm living my dream. So it's kind of like, I'm like, oh man, I should say running my own imprint, but I really am living my dream right now. I will say that I think most editors have the dream of discovering the next Nora Roberts or the next Colleen Hoover as that, but my authors are so wonderful. And I believe that all of them have that in them, like that star quality, that it wouldn't trade any single one of them. And I'm pretty much there. And again, I'm just going to throw out running my own imprint, the Maria Gomez imprint, just as as the next step. But I will say I'm living my dream already.
Okay, so I have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. Did I say author? Speed Dating with an Editor. We're doing something different now. But basically what it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What's the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
So this isn't publishing related, but the clumsiest moment that I had was I was at the front of the Zumba class. I was taking a Zumba class and I was very front because, I'm that student that like wants to be in the front, wants to just see everything. And I fell hard. I fell really hard. And I was so embarrassed that I jumped up, and instead of limping away as I should have, I just danced the rest of the class. But I had skinned my knees, so I had blood just like running down my leg. And I was just like, it's fine, I'm okay, let's just Zumba. And after class, and of course, it's just the adrenaline that like has me like not feeling the pain, because afterwards I had to like hobble over to my car and go get bandaged up. But that was a little clumsy, it's a little embarrassing.
I love that one so much. Just dance it off. It's okay. Nobody's
Just dance it off.
What are the 3 words that would best describe you?
Persistent, empathetic, and passionate.
What is your life motto?
My life motto, and all of my authors know this, I tell this to them all the time, is comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
Do not compare yourself to others. You only have to worry about making yourself the best version of yourself you can be. Do not worry about anybody else's path.
That's a good motto to have. What is the song that best describes you?
If it's aspirational, I'm going to say Hips Don't Lie by Shakira.
I love that song. That's one of my all-time favorites. What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
I love to dance. I was kind of auditioning to do some backup dancing. I enjoy it a lot. And I can read a full book in the span of a couple of hours if it's uninterrupted.
I mean, that makes sense considering your job, but also that still blows my mind when people are speed readers, because I couldn't imagine doing it. I know you can take courses and you can do it. It's just a talent, in my opinion, though. So well done.
Thanks. I'm an only child. So I would just like stay up all night reading, and it was just it came really natural.
I have had so much fun with you today, Maria. Thank you so much for coming on. And what's coming out? What should we be on the lookout for?
Oh, I have so many fabulous books, but I'm going to give you the 3 that just popped into my mind. Big Chicas Don't Cry, coming out in September by Annette Chavez Macias. It's about 4 cousins who are more like sisters and best friends than cousins. And that one, it's pitched more as a Latinx This Is Us. I don't know if you have the show This Is Us in Australia, but it's a really popular US show called This Is Us, and it's a family drama. And it's got everything from laughter to crying to grief to romance. It has 4 different female protagonists, and A+. Yeah. And then The One Who Loves You by Pippa Grant, who is one of my favorite rom-com authors. She is just fabulous, and I pitched this one as Schitt's Creek meets the Bromance Club, and it is it is about an heiress whose grandmother almost dies eating a piece of Kobe beef, and then takes them to this podunk town, and and they have to go where they're going to lose their inheritance. And she's a super heiress, and she meets this grumpy lumberjack, and he's a single dad, and it has all of the laughter, but it has all of the feels too. It's got a very big, deep message, and I love that. And then, of course, we have Catherine Bybee's When It Falls Apart, which comes out later this month. And it's based on Catherine's own experience with her father, her ailing father. And it is set in a post-pandemic world. And it features a single dad. It's set in Little Italy, San Diego. It has the most wonderful heroine and this really precocious little girl. There was one part in it, I was just like sobbing, and I just could not stop crying, but it was like the good kind of crying. It was very cathartic, and I'm not going to ruin it, but it's got everything. It's got love and family and great siblings, and it's the first in a new series by her, so I'm very excited.
I just realized I need you to pitch my books, because I want to buy all 3 of those books. Like, I was there with you. I'm like, wow.
I'll send them to you.
Thank you. We will definitely be on the lookout for that. I'll put those links underneath. But thank you so much for coming on today. I have had such a blast.
Me too. Thank you. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows, maybe I'll be able to rope you in and get you back in next year, maybe.
I would love that. And if you're ever in Seattle, please make sure to send me an email, and we will absolutely go out for drinks.
Please, yes, thank you. Well, I'm going to love you and leave you. And have a good day, Maria.
Bye. Thank you.
That's all right. Bye, guys.